Hi everybody, this is Mrs. Weglars, and we are going to be going over some notes on Tragic Love, an introduction to Romeo and Juliet. And the notes are going to introduce us to the story, give us the setting, the characters, a plot summary, and then also dive into the category of play that Romeo and Juliet is, and that is a tragedy. So let's get started. First, what we're going to be looking at is the setting. So, the story of Romeo and Juliet takes place in Verona, Italy. Verona, Italy is a real place. It is in current day Italy. It has really beautiful skylines, and you can see on the picture here, which is an artist representation, that it is very heavily populated. So, it is a metropolis. The story takes place in Verona and in the late 1500s. During the 1500s, we don't really have a lot of modern things that you would have nowadays. There would be no running water, there would be no electricity. People would have gotten married very, very young. Not a lot of people going to college, not even high school. And you'd have a lot of arranged marriages. So that's kind of the background of the setting of Romeo and Juliet. It's also taking place between two feuding families. So the first family we have is the Montagues. And then the second family we have is the Capulets. So the Montagues and the Capulets have been fighting for several years. They have not ever really been friends. We don't really know what the feud was about. We just know that they are arch enemies. Next, let's really dive into the characters. Since we have the two sides of the family, first thing we're going to do is look at the Capulets. Well, first we obviously have our main girl, and that is Juliet. Juliet Capulet, she's a young 13-year-old girl. She's really, really young, but for being so young, she's quite beautiful, quite smart, and really just only wants to ever marry if she falls desperately in love. The next set of characters we have are Lord and Lady Capulet. Lord and Lady Capulet. These are Juliet's parents, and the reason they're named Lord and Lady has to do with the time period. That would be a status of honor. They would have had a very strong political position in society. They would have been really close to the king and queen, and they would have had a lot of money and a lot of power. So it would be called Lord and Lady. Next we have Count Paris. Count Paris is the man that Juliet's father wants her to marry. Again, we have a lot of arranged marriages, and Count Paris is where it's at. That is who the Bachelor of the Year would be for Juliet. Then we have Tybalt. So you pronounce that Tybalt. Tybalt is Juliet's cousin. We don't know how close of a cousin, but we do know that he is very, very close to the Capulet family and is very loyal to serving them. Next, we just have Nurse. Nurse is Juliet's nurse, or as we would call her, a nanny, and she has taken care of Juliet since she was a baby, so she has a lot of motherly affection. So that's the Capulets. Let's move on to the Montagues. The first one we have is obviously Romeo Montague. He's a very young, very vibrant young man. Is about 17 years old. He is our main squeeze. Then we have Lord and Lady Montague, and those are Romeo's parents. Notice they have the same titles of Lord and Lady, so they are also equally powerful. And then we have Benvolio Montague. Benvolio, quite the name. Benvolio Montague is Romeo's cousin. So just like Tybalt is Juliet's cousin, we have Benvolio Montague, and that is a very close cousin of Lord and Lady Montague's son Romeo. Next we have Mercutio. Mercutio is Romeo's best friend. He's not directly a Montague, but he's on the Montague side. He's like family. We all have somebody in our lives that's sort of like family. Then, last but not least, we have Friar Lawrence. Friar is a term for pastor or bishop. It's also the name of a priest or a minister or a pastor. So Friar Lawrence is a priest and friend of Romeo. He's a priest and friend of Romeo. He's very close. Next, let's just go right into our summary. Get right into the thick of it. Well, at the very beginning of our story, we have the Capulets, and they have decided to throw a big party. The Capulets decide to throw a big party. We don't really know why. We think it's probably just to introduce Juliet to Count Paris. But they have a lot of money and power and wealth, so they would have thrown parties just because. Then we have Romeo Montague really wants to go to the party. He wants to go to the party because he wants to see Rosalind. Now, Rosalind is a girl he really, really likes. And he likes this girl because he has fallen desperately in love with her, and he knows she's going to be at this party, and he really wants to see her. But because of the feud, he's not allowed to go to the party. He's not invited. So he dresses in a costume, and he sneaks in anyway, all to see this girl, Rosalind. Has nothing to do with Juliet. Not yet. He hears her talking, and then he confesses that he loves her too. So Romeo hears her and tells her that he feels the same way. All right, going on to what you would normally do after you meet somebody is the next day you get married. Why not? So they decide to elope and have a secret marriage. So the next day, Romeo and Juliet are married secretly by Romeo's friend, Friar Lawrence. He decides to marry them in secret, and all will be well. Well, that doesn't last very long, because on that exact same day, there is a fight. So this fight is going to be heated. So the same day that Romeo and Juliet are married, Romeo's cousin, Benvolio, and his best friend, Mercutio, get into a fight with Juliet's cousin, Tybalt. So Benvolio and Mercutio get into a fight with Tybalt, 2 against 1. Well, Tybalt is really, really mad at Romeo for coming to the Capulets' party. So he starts a fight with Benvolio and Mercutio. So the reason that they're fighting is Tybalt found out that Romeo snuck into the party, and he wants to fight him, but Benvolio and Mercutio intervene. Well, Romeo shows up. He shows up to this fight after it gets started, but he does not want to fight Tybalt. Tybalt really wants to fight him, but he doesn't want to fight Tybalt because he's married Juliet, her cousin. But he can't tell anybody yet, so it's really, really frustrating for him. Well, then, Romeo's friends don't understand why Romeo won't fight. They have no idea. So Mercutio is like, well, fine. I am not going to back down. Mercutio fights Tybalt instead. And he goes right after him, but Tybalt ends up killing Mercutio. So Mercutio fights Tybalt, and then Tybalt kills Mercutio. Well, then Romeo does not take this lying down. He's not very happy. He's very angry, and he kills Tybalt. So Romeo is angry and kills Tybalt out of revenge. So now he's got blood on his hands. Well, this does not bode well. The Prince of Verona, the one who is running the joint, tells Romeo that he must leave the city forever and never come back. So he is banished. He has to leave and never come back. Well, he had just gotten married, and now his wife is all like, hey, what's going on? So Juliet's very sad because Romeo is gone, and she mourns his departing, and she's very, very heartbroken. I just got him, I just married him, and now he's gone. Well, remember, nobody knows about their love affair. Nobody knows that they're married. So Juliet's father, who doesn't know that she's married already to Romeo, decides to marry her off, to force her to marry a man named Paris. So he decides to marry her to a man named Paris. She does not take this very well. You can see her face. She's very, very upset. Well, they'd come up with a plan then. She does not want to marry Paris. She already is married to Romeo. Who does she go to but Friar Lawrence? So Juliet goes to Friar Lawrence for help. She wants to get out of her situation. So he gives her a secret potion to drink that will make her look dead. It won't kill her, but it'll make her look like she's dead, even though she'll just be sleeping. The friar says that he will tell Romeo to come and get her from the family tomb. So she'll take the potion, she'll look like she's dead, they'll put her in a tomb, and then Friar Lawrence will go tell Romeo and he'll come get her from the tomb. Well, of course, something has to go wrong. This is a tragedy after all. So before the friar can tell Romeo and Juliet that Juliet is not really dead, so before he can tell her, Romeo gets a message from a friend that Juliet is dead. He doesn't realize that there's some plan, but he just gets this message saying that Juliet is dead in Verona. Romeo is so upset. He wants to die beside his wife. So he buys poison and goes to Juliet's tomb. He said, if she's dead, then I want to be dead too. Well, guess who's there? He gets at the door, and there's stinking Paris, the guy that she was forced to get married to, or almost get married to. So at the door of the tomb, the door of her tomb, Romeo fights, and he kills Paris. He does end up winning, but he is already now has killed 2 people. Pretty intense. Well, then inside the tomb, Romeo drinks the poison and dies next to Juliet. Takes the poison, lays down next to her, and dies. Well, 1 minute later, literally 1 minute after he's dead, Juliet wakes up and sees Romeo dead next to her. She had just missed him. Well, Friar Lawrence comes into the tomb and tells Juliet what happened. I don't know why he showed up so late, but he's there. He explains to her what happened. Well, Juliet is overcome with grief. She can't live anymore without Romeo. So Juliet takes Romeo's dagger and kills herself. And there they are, the picture of the 2 of them dead next to each other. Well, the lesson learned from all of this between the 2 families is you have the Montagues learning and the Capulets learning that they should never fight again. So the Montagues and the Capulets learn a lesson from the death of their children. They agree to never fight again. Well, that's the basic summary of the story. It doesn't have a very happy ending, but it does have a lot of good meat to it. So our next part that we're going to kind of run through real quickly is just talking about what this story really is. This is a play that is called a tragedy. So Romeo and Juliet is defined as a tragedy. Well, what is a tragedy when it comes to literature? Well, the definition of tragedy is a dramatic work that has a serious or sad theme to it. So serious or sad theme. It is a character that has many problems or weaknesses. So tragedy usually ends with the deaths of the main character. So it does not have a happy ending. Well, what are some examples of tragedy that we encounter in our daily lives? Well, examples of tragedy that even happened in this country are we have 9/11, the attack on the Twin Towers in New York. We also have the Boston bombing, what happened during the Boston Marathon when several people lost their lives and got injured. We also have Hurricane Katrina, where many people lost their homes, their lives, their livelihoods in 2005 with a lot of flooding. And then we have something that we hear about on the news every day, and that is the Chicago shootings. We have so many people that are needlessly shot and killed in our city, but just ends in tragedy. Well, let's think about tragedy a little bit more. That's what we have in real life. How is this expressed just through human emotion? Well, it's expressed in three ways in modern society. We have movies, we have TV shows, and we have books. So what particular TV shows, movies, or books are here to show us what tragedy really is? Well, we definitely have one of my favorite shows, and that's Law and Order. Law and Order never really has a happy ending. It always ends up with them getting the bad guy, but then the murder still took place for no good reason, right? Then we have this movie called Titanic, which just documents another Leonardo DiCaprio movie. It documents the hundreds of lives that were lost when the ship Titanic sank in 1914. And that ship was called unsinkable. And then look what happened. Then we have another book called The Diary of Anne Frank. This portrays a real life story of a little girl named Anne Frank who lived in hiding for during the Holocaust because she was Jewish in a secret annex in her friend's house. Well, that's how we think about tragedy when it comes to literature, but what I want you to do is I want you to circle this next question on your notes. This is going to be something you need to go back and answer when the slideshow is done. What I really want you to think about is, how does real tragedy affect people's lives? What does it do to people's lives? What is it that we take away from it? So I'll answer this question in 2 to 4 sentences. Make sure you put a star or circle this to come back to it. Next, we're just going to really look at, just a couple more slides here, we're going to look at tragic love. Well, we have really just talked in depth about the definition of tragedy, and we defined Romeo and Juliet as considered a tragic love story. So let's just circle these next 2 questions. I want you to answer, again, in 2 to 4 sentences, how would you define tragic love? What is it to you? And then also, how does tragic love affect teenagers today? So what is it that you would define tragic love is, and how does it affect teenagers in particular? I'm talking about adults or kids, but you as a teenager, how does it affect you? Well, let's just go over our last little bit of notes, and that is kind of talking about, why do we read Romeo and Juliet today? This book was written in the 1500s. It takes place in the 1500s in Italy between teenagers, and it doesn't have anything to do with my life, Mrs. Wegler's. Well, not true. It actually has a lot. There are issues that apply to high schoolers even today that you will find in this book. It has a lot of really current things that you'll be like, oh my God, people still do that even now. Also, we need to ask ourselves, how does the story connect to the lives of teenagers today? What is it that it connects? Well, it connects really in 4 really strong ways. The first is through infatuation, and that is the obsession people have for each other when they first are attracted to one another. It also connects by really looking at what real love is, and then it looks at lust, and that is just, how people are thirsty for each other. That is the physical attraction part. And then lastly, it really connects through jealousy. So infatuation, love, lust, and jealousy. And that's all the notes that we have for today. Go back and do the questions that I had you circle, and then you can move on your checklist.